Dr. David Ajibade with the Brain and Body Foundation, and this is your health in your hands. Thank you for joining us. Now, as you know, I'm still in the United States, Dallas, Texas to be exact, but that hasn't stopped us from continuing to try to provide you with the best possible information on health so that you can make the right decisions and take the right actions. All right. So part of what we're doing, as you know, with COVID-19 is to look into what is being done within the COVID-19 space, especially since that's what's the radio everywhere now. It's very important that we understand how it's being handled in the Western world so that we can also understand how we can handle it better within the country. Today, I have a very special guest on. I'm going to quickly read his bio. Dr. Razak Badamasi is the Medical Director and Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine at JPS Health Network, which is based in Fort Worth, Texas. It's not too far from Dallas, Texas, actually. So a lot of what we do with regard to COVID-19, I mean, you've all heard about COVID-19 being referred to as the Great Invader, right? It's referred to as great because it attacks the brain, attacks the kidneys, attacks the liver, attacks the gut. But it is primarily it enters into the body through the upper respiratory system, and it works its worst havoc in the respiratory system, in the lungs. So the key specialists involved in treating this condition are, of course, the pulmonologists. That's why I'm so happy to have Dr. Badamasi on today to talk about this. So you're welcome to the show today, Dr. Badamasi.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Glad to be here.
You are very welcome. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. Of course, vaccines, changing, kind of separating hype from the media hype from what is actually happening, how different races respond to COVID-19, how your practice has changed since COVID-19 hit, and other things that might come along. But first of all, I want to ask you, have you had your vaccine?
Oh, yes, absolutely. First in line, got it last week, actually. Very minimal reaction, just a little bit of subjective fever and soreness, and that lasted less than a day, and back on my feet.
So you're not going to be turning into a zombie anytime soon.
So far, so good.
I mean, because I know there's been a lot of aversion, a lot of different kinds of stories about the vaccine and how it can.
Correct.
So it's safe for all. Correct?
It is really safe. Yes, this vaccine actually represents a very significant breakthrough in human knowledge. And it probably will turn out, this is my prediction, to be the safest means of vaccines. And subsequently, what you'll be having will be mostly mRNA vaccines, because prior to now, just for the sake of your viewers, what you will normally do will be to get a virus, kill it with some chemicals, then put the dead virus in people, right? That's how basically vaccination works. So the body immune system will now produce a lot of antibodies to all the antigen that the virus has, and such that they will learn the antigens, that is the protein that coats the outside of the virus. And when the real thing comes in, they will be ready. They've seen it before. They can fight it better. What mRNA technology says is you do not need your body to produce antibodies to all of the antigen of the virus. Let's just go into the genetic code of the virus. For example, this COVID-19 virus, it has about 29 major antigens. So the mRNA vaccine says, let's look for the most prominent of this antigen, the one that is most conserved, that is least likely to change, and let's look at the genetic code, let's isolate it, and let's inject it into people, such that our mechanism will learn that specific antigen very well and now produce a similar type of antigen without the whole virus, without the 28 other antigen complicating the whole picture, and produce effective neutralizing antibodies against that. So that way, if the body ever gets exposed to the virus, it will be destroyed. Now, the fear has always been with this vaccine. Will it change me? Every time people hear about genetic code, the DNA or the mRNA, people really get concerned, and appropriately so. I did have that concern. Will this mRNA vaccine mess with my own DNA? I don't want that, right? Because it can change my life down the road.
Right.
And the simple answer is it does not, because it doesn't even come close to where our DNA is stored in our cells, right? It just stays outside of that area. And the biggest challenge with the mRNA vaccine is not actually that it will get integrated. It is not stable. It gets destroyed within 24 hours. The body interprets the code, the mRNA gets destroyed. We only have the antigen that's been produced, and that is all. So it's called a non-integrating mRNA because it doesn't get into the nucleus and it is destroyed quickly. Now, for the long haulers, the other antigen, remember I mentioned there are about 29 antigens that this virus have. The other antigen, if you get a real infection, you produce antibodies against a lot of those other antigens that potentially could interact with your tissue. So these antibodies that you have to the vaccine will prevent that actually. It's a paradox, so still gives an edge to the vaccine.
So it is highly selective as opposed to the others where it's just like...
Exactly. It is really super selective. You're only targeting the spike protein of the coronavirus, yes.
Well, I think that should give some people some relief. And it's the fact that it doesn't get into the... You're saying it doesn't get into the nucleus or it just doesn't get into the DNA?
It doesn't get into the nucleus. So
at all?
At all, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't get into the nucleus. There is no way for it to get into the nucleus because of the way it is designed. Any mRNA that is capped appropriately at the end of the thread of the mRNA does not go back. It's like going back in time. It cannot go into the nucleus. There is no mechanism that exists for this mRNA to travel back into the nucleus. It stays in the cytoplasm, inside the cell, does not interfere with the genetic materials. Yes.
That's fantastic. That's good news. And I'm assuming that's how the other companies are, that's a similar approach the other companies are using, or is it all different?
Correct.
You got yours from Pfizer, right?
Yes, I got the one with Pfizer. Yes.
Okay, so the same principle. Okay, that's pretty good. That's really good. All right, we have to cover a lot of ground here.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about pulmonary care now with COVID-19. How has this affected your practice? And let's get some inside information on that.
Yeah, it's changed everything, essentially. Like you correctly mentioned in your introduction, COVID-19 is primarily a respiratory disease. And fortunately, though, a majority of the people, as far as we know now, it's asymptomatic to mild disease, which means most people won't even know they've gotten it. Right? Or if they are aware, it's just going to be, they'll be sick for a few days, mild, they'll still be able to do other activities and they will get, it will go away. Mm-hmm. Now, this is in about 70 to 80% of people. In 20% of people, they know they have something. They are sick from this, enough to warrant going to hospital to seek some care. And this is where you have a lot of differentiation. In older people, in people with a lot of underlying medical illness, then when I say older people, I mean generally people that are 60, 65 and older, people that have diabetes, hypertension, people that are overweight, they tend to have a much more severe disease. And that is when we get involved. They require oxygen, they require treatment, and you have a subset of these people that unfortunately will not respond to all the treatments that we have and will go on to develop respiratory failure related to COVID-19. And in those instances, they will require care in the ICU. And that is where really the rubber hits the road. 5% sounds small, right? But if you say 5% of 1 million, that's 50,000 people.
Right.
And in a country where already we are hitting 18 million, you can begin to see why this is a big problem. So those people that have respiratory failure come into the ICU. That's where you hear about mechanical ventilation and a host of other things that we're doing. So we have been extremely busy in terms of taking care of the 20% that seek care. A, to make sure that they don't progress from severe illness to respiratory failure. B, to recover those folks that do have respiratory failure, manage them as well and as aggressively as we can to make sure they do not die or develop severe disability from this. Now, there is another subset of people that develop severe COVID, which is unpredictable. I've seen people age range from 17-year-old, 22-year-old, mid-30s develop severe COVID without any comorbidities. These people are thought to have underlying genetic susceptibility to COVID-19. There is no way of predicting this. And increasingly, we are beginning to see more and more of this as this pandemic goes by.
Hang on a minute. Increasingly, you're seeing more and more people who don't have comorbidities, don't have the obvious signs. They're getting. Why do you think that is so?
I don't know yet. So I guess, again, with viruses generally, and I'm sure your listeners must have been hearing this also, the virus tends to mutate gradually over time. This happens with every single virus, Is that kind of like, am I seeing this just, is this just an aberrant view from my part that is not generalized to every other institution? Possibly. But we are kind of like seeing a trend where in our practice, we're seeing relatively young people come in with COVID. And it may be because, prior to now, there was lockdown, everybody was away, then the colleges opened, then you have a lot of young people go to college, the universities, they start mingling again, a lot of them fall sick, then you start seeing a lot of young people coming. So that is the general trajectory, but still the overwhelming majority of people with severe COVID requiring hospitalization are elderly and people with comorbidities. That is people that have underlying medical problems to start with.
Got it. Okay, Doc, we are going to have to take a short break here and then we'll be right back. So stay tuned, folks. We will be right back.
All right.
All right, okay, welcome back, folks. We are talking about COVID-19 in the USA with Dr. Abdulrazak Badamasi, a good friend of mine. Okay, so Doc, let's talk about the races, the black race as opposed to the whites and the Hispanics. What we heard a lot about during this whole COVID-19 thing was that blacks are getting hit much harder than the rest of the other races. And they are more severe. They tend to have a higher mortality. What has been your experience, and why do you think this is so?
Yes, that's actually a very great question. So I do see that in my practice, that generally minorities in the context of this country generally have more COVID, more severe COVID. The statistics show that currently a little over 1 in 1,000 black people have definitely died from COVID-19 since it started, which is a staggering number. Why is this so? There are two main reasons. It's not that black people have some genetic susceptibility to develop COVID-19. No, it's really the long-term consequences of racial disparities in healthcare in the United States, which means there is a lot more diabetes, more hypertension in the black communities, less access to care, which are all structural vulnerabilities that have been in place in this population, which COVID-19 now highlights. Remember what I mentioned about these other existing medical conditions predisposing you to a very severe infection. That's what we are seeing. Additionally, majority of folks in our black communities really work in service jobs where they really have to go out and interact with people. and not necessarily in white-collar office-based jobs. So they get exposed more. And most of these jobs do probably not provide them with enough benefits or flexibilities that they can take time off while still getting paid. So all of those, so regardless of whether or not there is shutdown, regardless of the pandemic, they will have to go out and work. So this, unfortunately, has led to a situation where they are exposed more, and because of the structural vulnerabilities that I've mentioned earlier, they are more likely to have severe infection due to no fault of theirs. This is something that's been accumulating over the years in this country.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's clear disparity socioeconomically. But also, I've also seen that when you compare those who are in the same socioeconomic level, there seems to be a preponderance of those common comorbidities like the diabetes, the strokes, the kidney disease, hypertension. Even if you compare across the same socioeconomic level, my experience has been that there seems to be a greater preponderance of that in the black race as opposed to the white race. Have you seen that?
Yes, it will appear as such, right? But you got to remember, it's very difficult to adjust that observation because it may be really a selection bias. If you kind of like take into account the impact of slavery, the impact of segregation, Jim Crow, the civil rights, distrust of healthcare system, from the Tuskegee experiment and all sorts. Those long-term accumulated disparities in the black communities and generally minorities, access to healthcare, how do you adjust for those, right? Those are important, tangible factors that impact the ultimate health of a community as we see it now. So they are difficult to be adjusted for, but in very well designed studies that have looked at healthcare disparities and outcome, every single time, not specifically in case of COVID, every single time when you're able to adjust for social economic disparities, those differences disappear completely. And even now, there was an interesting study out of Michigan when they started that actually showed that even though you are seeing a lot of black people coming with severe diseases coming to the hospital, if you are able to one way adjust for the social economic factors, those differences completely disappear. They are no more susceptible than comparable white people that have COVID-19. So that makes me think that is, at least every fair observer can come to the conclusion that social economic factor and structural health disparities plays a significant role in what we are seeing in terms of minorities generally having more severe disease.
Okay, great. We have about a few more minutes. Let's quickly talk about your message to our Nigerian people. So
for those of us back home, the key thing is we have been very fortunate so far in that Africa, and especially sub-Saharan Africa, have not seen really the brunt of this disease like it's been experienced in the Western countries. And that's something that I'm remarkably grateful for. We have been protected, but that does not mean that things cannot change or that we let down our guide. I still think people should follow all the recommendations from the federal government, their state government, and local government in Nigeria in terms of what is going on, and more importantly, what's about to happen with this disease. What the incidence rate, the epidemiology is in every single locale. They should listen to their healthcare authorities back home, to the recommendation and guidance that they have. This disease is no joke. It's very difficult to predict who will have severe disease amongst those that are healthy. And of course, every population have vulnerable population. That is my first recommendation. The second thing is, as soon as a vaccine becomes available in your locale, I will urge everybody to get a vaccine. Those that have any questions or concerns, I will strongly encourage them to discuss with a doctor where they are, preferably their own primary care doctor, to discuss their individual unique situation with your doctors before going ahead. And I'm sure they will get the same recommendation that it's probably safer and better to have those diseases. The third specifically goes to the young people. It is true and correct that young people are generally less vulnerable to severe illness from COVID-19, but they do have a significant role to play. The thing most people fail to realize about this virus is the first 5 days after you acquire the infection, they are the peak time that you can spread the infection without you even being aware that you have the virus. So most people spread the infection most efficiently before they become aware that they are sick. Even though you may not have a severe disease from this virus, but you can take it home to your family members, grandparents, aunties, uncles, other people with other comorbidities. So it behoves young people too to socially distance, to practice social distancing, and to avoid putting their family in situation where they will develop severe illness, and these young people will be the cause of that, unbeknownst to them. So young people should definitely be at the forefront and follow the recommendation of the healthcare practitioners in Nigeria, the federal government, Federal Ministry of Health, their local government, NCDC. Just follow the guidelines. It's a little bit difficult, but at the end of the day, I know and pray we will get through this together.
Amen to that. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Badimosi. I know it's a very, very busy period for you. As a matter of fact, we had to drag you away from meetings you've been having since what time? 6 o'clock in the morning? 7?
Yes.
Gosh, man, yeah, God bless you. So stay strong and stay safe, okay, my brother. Take it easy, and my regards to the family, and I hope we can all have cause to rejoice next year that we made it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. Thank you. So guys, folks, thank you so much for staying tuned. We will continue to produce important information that you can act on as we go along. I remember we are working on doing our groundbreaking research with regards to sickle cell disease beginning next year. We are hoping, our goal is to eradicate the suffering of kids with sickle cell disease, especially those below the age of 10. In fact, from our research, we have seen that there's absolutely no reason why kids should suffer the way they do at this age, and this research will help to demonstrate that. So if you want to know more information about it, go to our website. It should be shown afterwards. And so God bless, and we will see you next week. Have a wonderful new year. Thank you.